probably, yeah, you can probably go up. What do I have? Not anymore. As long as it's not chirping, you're good. Here, battery. Yeah, you just snap it in. That's plenty of time. I don't think I can stand on the top. There's a 0. I mean, we start, right?
Yes.
That does mean we
Somebody's
start.
on.
All right.
Yeah. I'm trying to monitor comments on here. So I'm watching, so if you're watching on the live stream, I'm monitoring comments.
Yeah, give us some
I
comments.
didn't do that last week, but I want to do it this week.
We have an interview tonight for Greg Smith, and so you can even add your own interview questions in the comment section if you
Yeah,
like.
if you send them in the comment section, he sees them now, so he can't really ignore them. So any question you want to send, you just feel free. And I can't double check him. I don't have my laptop, but Jeff can see them. So
No, the
Jeff
whole
will make
world.
sure he doesn't get away with anything.
Yeah.
But I can still ignore them. I can.
You
what-
can try.
You
I'm
can
only
say,
monitoring one channel though. He's monitoring a different.
Yeah, I can say I refuse to answer that question,
You can do that.
but I won't.
Yeah.
You know, when you're looking at the Facebook, no, it's the YouTube feed. When you're looking at that on here, it's really weird because you have to swipe to be able to see the questions. So that's kind of weird.
That's kind of weird.
All right.
All right. Well, welcome in everyone. Glad you're choosing to join us tonight for the Clarksville Highway Wednesday night live stream. Again, we got myself, Jeff Henry, Houston Smith over there,
Good morning.
and Greg Smith in the middle here. So we're glad y'all are here and thankful you've chosen to join us tonight. So,
Cool.
Greg, you ready for some questions?
Yeah, so the way this normally works is we do a Bible study and then questions, but tonight I think we're doing questions first. So
You told us whatever made us happy.
whatever makes
we
you,
asked
I'm not
you
in,
like 4 times, and you didn't give us an answer, so we're interviewing you.
I'm not in charge. So whatever makes you happy, I'm good with.
You have the hand mic, that makes you in charge. But
No, I'm not in charge because
That's my vote.
I'm the getting interviewed person, so
well,
that person can't
Jeff
be in
has
charge.
all the interview questions, so
So Jeff is in charge.
Jeff really should be in charge right
So
now.
Jeff
all
is
the
in charge.
control over here. All right, so it's probably going to be a lot similar to the questions we asked last week, but maybe some more if we get some comments of questions. But the first one that you asked me, and I'm going to ask you as well, is how were you introduced to the church?
That wasn't the first question I asked you, but that's
It wasn't?
okay. I can do it.
Oh.
It was what was your favorite book of the Bible? I think
Oh, okay.
maybe not.
Last week, well, technically, it was what was my favorite food, I think, at the beginning.
All right, I have.
What?
Hang on, I have a question here.
All right, we're already
Who's your
getting some
favorite son?
questions.
Okay, so I'm trying to answer your mother's question because she's got question mark, question mark, question mark.
She can ask you when she gets home. Let me
But that is,
When you
we
get
are live, hot babe. So whatever you're looking at there, you probably need to
see.
refresh
Apparently,
your page.
your website is not live streaming, or she hasn't clicked the live stream button. Either that, or when I did your website, I still haven't made the live stream button go to anything yet.
No, it does. I'm pretty sure.
It does. I don't think the button does anything, but I think we set it up where the live stream appears on your website.
Okay.
So I think she just needs to scroll up.
Okay.
see.
Well, maybe she will. Maybe
or
she'll
try
figure
one
that out.
of the other 7 mediums that we use.
All right. So, which question am I asking? Favorite book of the Bible, or how I got introduced to the
let's
church?
do favorite
Let's
book
do
of the
that.
Bible.
That's a really tough question, but I think Revelation. I think Revelation is my favorite book.
Why? That's like
Well, because I mean, your favorite book is the one that you like and the one you like to study.
yeah, but
So-
why is it your favorite? I mean, you like to study it, but why do you like to study it?
I like the symbolism and I like the message. I like the way it's presented. So I really like it as a book. I like everything about it.
All right, tell us what Revelation means.
That's a whole class. But it means Jesus wins. That's a really short version of it. But I really do. It's
It
got
looks
the
like
wrong.
you're-
Oh,
Reveal.
Looks like your website's working from what I can
yeah.
tell.
It says it's got the wrong date, and yes, that's because the new website I have to go in and change, and I probably didn't do that. So yeah. So Revelation, and maybe we'll do. I've done a couple of Revelation classes at Clarksville Highway. I've done one. Maybe we'll do another one. I like them. I like
I'll
them.
be there.
I'll be there.
Okay.
Yeah, I need some help on that one.
Good.
My notebook.
Yeah, so maybe we'll do that on Wednesday night after we finish all of our interviews. Maybe people can vote, see if they want to do Revelation as a class. All right.
You got a question?
Oh, I got all kind of questions. Although I kind of know the answer to some of my questions.
I don't know about getting interviewed by my oldest son.
You invited me here.
I did
That's
invite
your
you there,
fault.
so it's
No,
good.
No, I'm not going to do anything too crazy. I want you to tell people about your first sermon.
My first sermon.
Yep.
My first sermon was at Exchange Street Church of Christ. I will never forget it. It is, "What color are your thoughts?" was the name of the sermon. And I mean, I rehearsed, and I mean, I was ready. I mean, I had put, your grandpa helped me because he kind of helped me with the content. And so I got up to preach my first sermon. And I remember there was this ceiling fan over the pulpit area. And I don't know if it came on, but I got up there and I set all of my notes out. And when I got ready to start, the ceiling fan started and it blew all of my notes off of the podium. And so I said, I'm going to need those. So I got down and collected all of them up and then got back up there and did my first
30
sermon.
seconds of awkward silence while you.
Yeah,
put
it was
notes up.
it was kind of embarrassing a little bit, but it really didn't bother me. It was
It
like,
probably helped.
yeah,
actually.
it might
Probably
have.
like broke the ice a little bit.
Yeah.
Was it like a Sunday night, Wednesday night?
It was a Sunday night. We had a thing on, I think it was the fourth Sunday night. I think it was every month. We had like one of the teens or one of the men from the church would speak. And I mean, I know you're going to ask me about people who were mentors to me, but the night that I was baptized, Richard Jones, who attended church there, he was in charge of getting those speakers together. So the night I was baptized, I mean, I was still wet, and he walked up and he said, "So the next fourth Sunday, I don't know if it was the third Sunday or the fourth Sunday." He said, "The next fourth Sunday, are you going to speak?" And Jill Hamblin, who was in the youth group, was there, and she said, "Yes, he will." And I said, "Well, give me the one after that. You know, give me a little bit of time to prepare." So, yeah, I remember I got asked to preach the first time while I was still wet. But I thank Richard Jones for that, because, you know, without him kind of pushing me and asking me to do that, I may not ever have done it.
Probably not. I was gonna say, so for all the like younger guys out there, they're kind of getting off easy these days.
Yes.
Nobody just makes them preach.
Yeah, you're supposed
Nobody
to.
made me preach when I was in high school.
Yeah, you're supposed to ask them while they're still wet from the baptism.
Yeah, we just
they
ask
can't-
them
they're
to
too
do
distracted to
prayers
say
and
no.
stuff.
Yeah, but that was really a good program at Exchange Street at the time. I mean, I spoke, and Greg and Craig Lawrence and would speak, and I mean, there were several guys who would. I mean, we were pretty accustomed to getting up and doing that.
So were you like, when I first started, I had to type out my notes almost word for word, and I would kind of like memorize what I was going to say. And since then, I don't do that so much anymore. But did you start like that, and then kind of, or like when your notes flew out on the floor, was that like all the things that you were going to say, or was that just bullet points?
No, that very first one. That was all
Yeah.
the things I was going to say.
Yeah, you needed those.
Yeah, I mean, the first sermon, the first couple, I wrote them out pretty specifically. Now, probably after 4 or 5, I didn't. I mean, it was kind of strange, Houston, because at that time, like in Obion County, I had a lot of opportunities just to go preach at different places, you know, and so sometimes churches, if their minister was out of town or something, they would call one of those guys at Exchange Street. We would go out and preach for them. So I got several opportunities to preach, like through high school, probably, you know, I didn't keep a count of it, but I would say, you know, like 15 to 20 times I went out to speak somewhere, either at Exchange Street or another
Pretty
church.
crazy.
That might be more times than I've ever actually preached at all.
That's what I was about to say.
Yeah.
Well,
it hadn't been far from that. But I
I'm
don't
close
think
to that,
it's probably
15 to
not-
20
Yeah, I
probably.
might be close to 15 to 20.
yeah, but I'm hearing feedback from something that's kind of,
No, we hear Mr. Reggie down there. He's listening to us.
okay. So that was, but I did, it gave me a lot of experience to do that. But, I mean, you know the story, I'd always pass out. I mean, for a lot of those,
Yeah, you would lock your knees.
I'd lock my
You'd lock
knees.
your knees and you'd lose blood flow.
Yeah, and so I'd pass out. And so then, that's why I bounce around like a rabbit when I'm preaching, because
Yeah, that's why he
I learned
walks
not to
around.
do
It's
that.
not just the ADD. It's because if he stops, he'll pass out. He's like a
Yeah.
shark.
Yeah, and so it's just a habit I developed, trying not to lock my knees. I did that in a choral concert one time. I locked my knees. I was up on the top riser, and your Uncle Darrell was right in front of me, so I felt myself getting dizzy. So I reached out to grab him to steady myself, and he thought I was aggravating him, and he elbowed me, and knocked me off the back of the next thing I remember, I was laying on the floor, waking up, and everybody was standing over me. But that was his fault. I mean, if he would just let me hold on to him, I could have just sat down instead of being knocked off the back of the risers.
He didn't know. That's what I would have done to Rye.
But
I would have pushed him off.
So Houston asked you about your first sermon. What's your best sermon?
oh, I don't know, man.
The last one.
Yeah, the last one. I have no idea. What's
your longest
That would be.
That's a better question.
The longest sermon.
Yeah, what was your longest sermon? 25 minutes.
No, honestly, the longest sermon I ever preached, I think, was at Tres Dias. I mean, Tres Dias is a spiritual retreat thing, and I went there as a spiritual advisor, and you had to speak. And I spoke, it was pretty common you would speak 50 minutes to an hour. So that was probably the longest sermon. I can't, like in an auditorium like this, I can't hold everybody's attention for that long. About 20 or 25
20
minutes.
20 minutes is the limit.
Yeah, you're not
lose
gonna-
everybody after
I
20
actually
minutes.
probably, if you look at, like you go back and look at my sermons, they're mostly probably about 25 minutes, maybe.
Yeah.
But I can't hold your attention that long.
Yeah. Cool. How were you introduced to church? And like just, I don't know, kind of a
that was-
conversion type story?
I don't ever remember not going to church, Jeff.
Yeah.
Kind of different from your story. From the time that I can't ever remember a time that we didn't go. Mom and Dad went, I
We should
guess,
find out. Like,
my entire life. And
after
some
how
of
many
that
weeks
was
after Greg's birth was.
yeah, but
in
some of that
church?
was because of like grandmother and Daddy Bill's influence, my mom's parents, and Mamaw, my dad's mother went to church, but my grandfather didn't until he was later in life. Probably, I guess Papa was probably maybe 70, or right before 70 when he started going to church. So I've always gone to church. The first church, I remember going to 7th and Bethel, which was in Memphis, but I don't remember if that was after we moved, like to Hornbeacon, we went back to Memphis to visit. I remember the church building, and I remember a lot about that church building, but I don't know. That might have been when I was older. I remember going to church at Hornbeak. So then when I was a teenager, we started to go to Exchange Street because the youth group was me and my brother and my sister, basically. So that wasn't working out so well. So we started going to Exchange Street. And so I was baptized at Exchange Street
And where's
on
that
a
at?
Sunday night, Union City, Tennessee.
Union City.
That's probably, I think it was like November sometime. I couldn't probably give you an exact date, but I could probably get really close.
Yeah, I can't remember exact date, but mine was November sometime.
Yeah, but it was a Sunday night. I do remember that. And Waylon Lawrence, I guess, baptized me. I have no idea what he preached on that night, but Waylon would put a cough drop in his mouth, and he would preach till the cough drop ran out.
That's a good system.
Yeah, I was
Maybe.
always hoping he'd put like a marble or something in there, but yeah,
He'd never stop.
yeah, probably not.
Marble doesn't run out.
Cool. What else? So you went to Lipscomb, right?
Yeah,
And you have any favorite teachers or professors there? Or
yeah.
maybe preachers you follow now even?
I had several. Honestly, I had some, and I'm sure the Bible department there now is excellent too, but I'm not there now, so I can't comment on that. But the Bible department when I was at Lipscomb was really, really good. And probably the reason that I went to Lipscomb was Tom Holland. And
Not Spider-Man Tom Holland.
Different Tom Holland.
Not Spider-Man Tom Holland, preacher
I'd
Tom
probably
Holland.
go to Lipscomb if Tom Holland was there.
In fact, he had a great influence on me. I took a lot of Dr. Holland's Bible classes. He would give you a book if you made, it was either 100 or an A. He would give you a book. He'd sign it and give you a book. So he gave me a lot of books. But
Books that he wrote, or just books
yeah,
that he had?
books that most of them
Just
were
sign
books
a
that he
random
wrote.
book.
Sign a random book.
Yeah, no, most of them were books that he had written, and he had a lot of influence on me. And probably the reason I went to Lipscomb after I got there. Lipscomb was really different then because if you were a Bible major, you still had to have daily Bible. So like every class that you had was a Bible class, but you still had to take your daily Bible class.
I had to do that at Harding.
I know, and it was crazy. It's like
Daily?
I already have daily Bible. So
We had like a certain amount of.
We had
Bible
daily Bible
courses.
class and we had chapel every morning.
yeah. So the daily, so Leo Snow is who I'd usually always try to take for my daily Bible class because I loved Leo. I cooked him rabbit one night for when I was in one of his classes. I went to his house and cooked him rabbit. But so Dr. Snow was a great influence on me. Harvey Floyd was my Greek professor my first 3 years, and he was wonderful. Hard, but wonderful. My last year, Michael Moss was my Greek professor, and I've kind of always been indebted to Dr. Moss because he is the one who introduced me to Graham Court and electronic Bibles and how to do all of those, how to use, we'd write programs and search for constructions in the Greek New Testament. It's a lot easier than that now in the Bible programs that I have, but they're all built off of the one that he taught us, like when I was a senior in college. So he was a great influence on me, and he's one of the reasons that I went back there to get my master's from Lipscomb. And he was ahead of the master's program when Lipscomb started it and asked me if I'd come finish there, so I did. He and your mom are one of the reasons that I actually finished my master's degree. You know this story?
I've heard that. Well,
So-
I don't know about him. I've heard mom's side of it.
Yeah, well, what happened with that is I had taken all of the classes except writing my thesis, which was going to be on Revelation, by the way.
That I
And-
didn't know.
And then,
Back to the.
That's not what
favorite
I would have
book.
chosen on my
yeah,
thesis, that's
and
for sure.
so then I went into sales. So I started doing sales. So I never went back and took my 2 classes or wrote my thesis. So he called me one night and he said, we were in the car, and he said, if you don't take, you were a little fella, he said, if you don't take your 2 classes or write your thesis, you're going to lose all your credits. And I was like, well, that's okay, Dr. Moss, I don't really care. So I hung the phone up, and your mom said, who was that? And I said, well, that's Dr. Moss. He said, if I didn't write my thesis or take 2 classes, I was going to lose all my credits. And she said, what 2 classes are you going to take? I'll probably get a comment from that in a minute. So I better check see if I get a comment on that. But so yeah, I took 2
Because
classes
at that point
and
you had
finished up.
no plans to go back into preaching, right?
No, not really. I mean, I didn't have really any plans to go back to preaching at that point.
That was one of the things that I actually was going to ask, because you were a preacher,
Yep.
and then there was like, how long was it? It was like 10 years that you were in sales? Was it longer than that?
10 years.
10 years? And then you went back to preaching.
Mm-hmm.
So talk about that. Tell us about, like, was there a reason that happened? What brought you back into preaching? Did you learn anything that was useful? Like, did any of the skills carry over? I mean, obviously, yes, but...
Yeah, a lot of the skills carried over. I don't, at the time, there were some things, there were some really good things about the church that I was at that point, and there were some things I didn't like very much. So I was kind of going through a thing, Houston, and it may be something similar to what you're going through now, which was I didn't know, I knew I wanted to preach, and I knew I wanted to work in churches, but I didn't know that I wanted to do it for money. So, I mean, all of that time
Sounds pretty familiar.
that I was out of full-time ministry work, like I was a deacon at Pegram part of that time.
Well, I know that you preached during that
Yeah,
time, because we would drive to...
Random places.
No, there was a church right by where our grandparents lived,
Fremont.
Fremont. We still pass it when we go. We saw
Yeah.
it. We drove by it the other week when we went to visit.
Yes.
And we would drive up there every weekend for like
Every
2 years.
Every
something like that.
weekend for about a year and a half.
Yeah.
And that was just a situation where they were looking for somebody. They needed somebody to come preach. And I wasn't preaching anywhere at the time. So they asked, and I said, sure. So then after I started going there, then I just went the next week and the next week and the next week and I just kept going. And if you'll remember, that was the summer that you stayed all summer at your grandparents'. You alternated between grandparents because
We didn't do that a whole summer a lot, but we did it
that summer.
That was it, we stayed the whole summer that
Well,
summer?
what would happen is on Thursday, we would call and say, okay, we're coming this weekend, and you would say, because you were the spokesman, you would say, we're coming home with you. And I said, okay. So then we would get there Friday night, Saturday night, and get ready to leave Sunday night, and you would say, well, we've decided we're going to stay another week, because you got to see us for 2 or 3 days. And so then you decided, so
Got your
every week you
parental
were coming
fix.
home on Thursday, and by Sunday night you weren't coming home
I
again.
remember spending a lot of time
Yeah.
during the summer there.
Yeah, well,
which
that
I
was that
enjoyed.
one particular summer. So yeah, I mean, I didn't know that I wanted to preach for money, and I had an opportunity to go into sales, so I did that, and it was very helpful. I mean, I learned a lot. You know, it was a good thing to do.
Oh, I know you kept a lot of the relationships you made in sales because you're
Yeah.
still friends with a lot of people you worked with.
Right. Right. So, you know, and then, you know, I really wasn't looking to go back into ministry necessarily either. You know, I had talked to a couple of places, but one of my, in fact, he's asked to come here to preach. We need to have him come. Bob Turner was one of my clients, and he was an elder at Una. And he asked if I would come and talk to Una about coming over there and working part-time as an outreach minister. So I went over there to work part-time as an outreach minister, so I was working part-time there. And actually how I got here is they were kind of looking for a preacher, and Cindy Mears called a friend of mine, Andy Conley, and his dad was actually one of my professors at Lipscomb, Marlon Conley, another guy that had a lot of influence. He was a speech teacher, he and Paul Prill. And she just asked if, you know, she said, we need somebody to fill in, and Andy said, you need to call Greg. So she called me while I was sitting in the office at Una, and I mean, and I had stuff going on at Una. I mean, I was teaching classes and doing stuff, and I said, well, I can come 2 Sundays, and you know, and I gave her the 2 Sundays that I could come, and then after the second one, they asked to talk to me about a job, and then all of a sudden we ended up at Clarksville Highway. So that was in 2005. So they're probably getting tired of me by now, so that's what, 17 years?
17 years.
I remember like a little window where I feel like there were other churches that there was at least one I remember that we went to, and I don't know if it was an interview or if it was you preached there one Sunday, but I think there were like 1 or 2 other ones that I remember.
They weren't.
Kind of all in that same window.
There were several places in that same window, but none of them were interviews. I mean, they were just going to speak. And I don't know, the elders, you'd have to get Reggie in the back and ask him if they're coming, but my impression,
didn't think this was an
when I
interview.
came here is I didn't think this was an interview either.
Yeah, well,
I mean, I was just coming to speak. And
that worked out, didn't it?
And so it ended up being an interview. Yeah.
So, it's kind of, might be a difficult question, but you've served here for 17 years, right?
Yeah.
So what's the key to longevity at a place in ministry?
20-year contract.
Yeah, I told him I had to have a 25-year contract. How's that?
Just get that right at the beginning.
You, still going on. You know, honestly, Jeff, I
There's not
think.
too much left up.
Look, Reggie's back there saying every time we repeat the 25-year contract, it repeats, but before long, I'm going to be 100, but before it runs out. I think Voltee. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was your mom saying. When we lived in, I'll get right back to your question. When we lived in Nashville on Bunker Hill, remember there was a church right up the road called Voltee.
The one that we would ride our bike around in the parking lot?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So some of those places that you remember is they would, when somebody, Carl McKelvey was at Voltee, and he was also one of the professors at Lipscomb when I was there. So when they needed somebody, a lot of times they would call and ask if I could come over and speak. So a lot of those times we would be going to Voltee.
I remember going in there a couple times.
Yeah. So that was another place that I preached, you know, pretty often. Not all the time, but pretty often. So longevity question. I don't know how to answer that, really. I can answer it from my perspective at Clarksville Highway, and I think one of the things that leads to that is the elders have always been really good to kind of have an open dialogue. I mean, I mean, we talked about that before I was ever hired. You know, just being able to come in and be honest with each other without worrying about, are you going to get fired or make somebody mad? And so through the years, we've just been able to develop a really open dialogue where we can, you know, and it's just not me, but the eldership as a whole. We can go in and really talk about what we want to talk about and say what we want to say. And so, I mean, I think that was really helpful. And honestly, I think even going in to Clarksville Highway, I mean, we had, you know, we just had some pretty, I think we had some pretty good expectations. I mean, I think we communicated that stuff pretty clearly. So, you know, being able, and I know this is not true at every church. It's been true at most of the churches I've been to, though, is, you know, being able to go to the elders meetings whenever you want and sit down. I mean, we don't have closed door meetings, and we definitely don't have meetings without ministers if they want to attend. I mean, they know, you know, just like you know, you're invited every time that we meet. So, I mean, if there's something they need to talk about and I don't need to be there, they just ask me to get up and leave, and that's cool.
Right.
You know, but I think that's probably the secret, is just making sure you've got good communication and you all realize you're working on the same team. It doesn't mean you have to agree with everything or agree with each other all the time, but it means that you're all working for the same goal.
Right.
So they've been very good to me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I hope to be here a long time too. So,
Right. Well,
trying to get some.
Well, see,
some
I
advice on
negotiated
how
my
to continue.
25-year. You negotiated 25-year
Sign a
contract.
contract.
25 years.
Yeah, that is the running joke here. I don't actually have a 25-year contract. You know that. It kind of goes year to year. But, you know, the reason that became a running joke is because even in the interview process, you know, I said, I don't want to be here a short period of time. You know, it's not like a stepping stone to something else.
Right.
You know, the boys were, you know, Rye was just getting ready to go into first grade, and I didn't want to be one of those preachers that, you know, uprooted their family every 3 to 4 years to go somewhere else. And so, you know, we just had expectations that wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
And so we tried to work to make sure it didn't.
Once was enough for me.
Once, yeah.
Once was plenty.
Yeah.
To move schools?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Houston had to move schools once. I mean, Rye did too, but Rye probably doesn't remember it nearly
Yeah, he was in like
Houston.
kindergarten though. It doesn't really count.
Yeah. But that was enough for me to realize that I didn't want to do that I didn't want to be somebody who moved every so many years, and my kids had to, you know, get reassociated with a different group.
Right. We did get a question in the comments here.
Oh, yeah.
So Travis Claude said,
Oh, good old Travis.
now that Jeff Gordon isn't driving, who's your favorite NASCAR driver?
Well, it never was Jeff Gordon.
That's a loaded question.
I was a huge Davey Allison fan. And I know that was a long, long time ago, but nobody's ever really captured that place like Davey had. But before that, I was a Ricky Rudd fan, but probably now Ryan Blaney. I really like Ryan Blaney. I kind of think maybe he'll do well.
And if y'all are listening like me and have no idea who any of these people are.
Yeah.
Some of you are like me and don't have a choice.
Yeah.
You get taught all the NASCAR drivers?
No.
Hey, I mean,
No.
if I went to a race, I think I would enjoy it. But
He used
I
to.
don't know if I would
He
watch
used
it
to
all
take
the
the
time.
TV from us and then sleep through the whole race.
Well, that's what dads
That hasn't
do.
really changed though, so
No.
which is just expected now.
Yeah, that's what dads are supposed to do.
He took us to a few races when we were younger. They were fun.
I did. Took Rye to one, took you to one.
You took me to more than one. You took me to one when I was in middle school. Might have been high school.
High school, I think. Is that when we went to Talladega?
Yeah, we went to Talladega
Yeah.
and we sat down in the middle up on top of that camper.
Yeah.
Camper.
We
That's
were like
when,
on the roof in a
yeah. We went with Danny Gill. Danny, yeah. And he had a couple of trucks running the truck races, and we sat down there with him.
fun. We watched the Blues Brothers.
Yeah, we did. That was yeah.
So do you have a current preacher or something that you like to follow on the week to week, or? Is somebody's podcast you listen to or anything like that?
No, not really. I don't. I mean, I hardly ever listen to a podcast.
Not that you have time when you're doing
Yeah,
your
I
own
mean,
stuff.
He won't even read a Bible translation. He just translates it himself when he reads it. So
yeah. So I don't really. I mean, I know that sounds bad, but I don't. I don't really have anybody that I listen to every week. I mean,
I think our generation likes the podcast stuff a lot.
Oh yeah.
yeah.
I like
I don't.
podcasts.
You could talk about it with me, I'm sure, back and forth.
Yeah, I mean, I did that crazy little podcast. Like, I put like 12 episodes out there.
Yeah.
The thing had like 5,000 downloads. I'm like, who's listening to
Shoot,
that?
It wasn't me. I didn't even listen to it.
I was like, who's
Wasn't
listening
me.
to that?
Somebody
but
did.
anyway, it was, yeah. So I probably should do that again, because you're right. Your generation likes that, and it's not something that I really do. Now, growing up, we'd go to the, there were the Tulsa Soul Winning workshops, and back then there were a lot of those type of workshop type things. And I used to love to hear Marvin Phillips and Terry
And
Rush.
there's lectures every year.
Yeah, and I go to the lectureships every year.
Yeah.
But I don't really have a favorite that I circle names and say I want to go hear this person. But now there were a lot of people like who had influence on me through that journey. Like every one of those ministry stops, even in high school, there were people who had a great deal of influence. Like in high school, Waylon Lawrence was a preacher there, and Waylon had a lot of influence. Dan Pitts led the Obion County Youth A Cappella Chorus. Is what we had back then. It had like 75 members in it.
Do they still do that kind of
No, but it was a happening thing back in the day. But, and Richard Jones and Tom Jones, his brother, all of those, were really instrumental in teaching Bible classes and kind of pushing me to do stuff like leading prayers. Like the first prayers, I remember I had to write them down because I was afraid I wouldn't know what to say, so I'd write them down on a sheet of paper. But, then as we did them and became more accustomed to them, it was good. All right, so we get another question with Travis. Then, when I got to Lipscomb, those professors had, they had a lot of influence on me.
Yeah.
When I was at West Huntsville, Byron Laird, who was the minister, he was the Robin Wadley was the preacher there, but Byron had been the preacher before him, and he was still on staff. And, those guys Byron was really instrumental in, not just ministry stuff, but helping me understand how taxes worked. A lot of stuff they don't teach you in school that you really need to know. Mm-hmm. And Byron was a great influence. That's where I met Tim Logan, and Tim has always been a great influence. I consider him one of my mentors. If I really have like a big issue and I need to talk to somebody that's kind of disconnected, he's the guy to call, And so, all of those guys you can't, they had such a tremendous influence. So I went to Cheap Hill and Larry Nash and Bill Orange. I'm having lunch with Larry tomorrow, So you still, you have all of those people from every step along the journey that still have a great impact on you.
Right.
So, you'd like to look at that and say, well, I got through this journey by myself, but nobody ever does. Every step has somebody that's really important. Even when I went to Beltline, Gordon McWhirter was the preacher, and I called him Dad. And then there was a guy there that Jim Gurley was the counselor. I called him Granddad because I was just cutting up and being silly with him. But, but even through that whole section, it was, all of those guys had, they all have an influence. So wherever you go along the journey, everybody has a step in that. Is that Travis's question, Reggie? Yeah. That's a tough question. How do you balance elder and preacher? And that is, in one way it's a really tough question, and in another way it's not. So several years ago when we appointed elders at Clarksville Highway, they asked if I'd like to be an elder. And at first I was kind of like, no. But then I thought about it, and I thought, well, everything in the elder description that an elder is supposed to do, that's what I'm doing anyway. And so you hear stories where preachers and elders don't get along, and like there's a tension in that. And I hate to hear those stories because that's not what we were like. We had a really good relationship with each other. And and normally a preacher is just doing what an elder does. You know, we're out ministering to people, taking care of people. We're trying to do the things that help the church grow. So by and large, it's worked really well, and it's not really hard to differentiate between those two at Clarksville Highway. Now, there is one thing that I don't get involved in. If they talk about who they're going to hire or what they're going to pay somebody, then I step out of that discussion. Because in those areas, I'm still an employee. So I don't get involved in those discussions. So, but we had that understanding when I became an elder. And I said, hey, when we get to talk about who we're going to hire or what we're going to pay people, then because I am paid, I'd like to step out of those discussions. And they said, fine, so that's what I do. But sometimes, you know, so I think it might be different at other places, but here it's really, I really haven't seen it a changing role at all. I don't know if that answered Travis's question, but
No either.
Probably not.
If
I
it
feel like
didn't,
you're
he'll
in a
send it
pretty
back.
Unique situation though. Like I don't think it would be that easy of a balance in a lot of other places.
yeah, you know, Houston, you
Maybe
may
not,
be
I don't
right.
know.
I don't know. I mean, I know other ministers who are elders too, and they seem to have a pretty good relationship, and it seems to work. It seems to work okay. I guess what really bothers me about that is sometimes you start hearing discussions where it's like elders and ministers aren't on the same page.
Yeah.
You know, and then that really bothers me because I think deep down we all are. We just need to communicate that better.
Yeah, definitely.
What time is it?
7:37.
Goodness. Wow.
I got one more question. Maybe Houston's got another one too. I don't know.
I could come up with one if I want to.
But we probably should get to a Bible study here pretty
Well,
soon.
maybe if we don't Bible study tonight, we'll. Oh, and by the way, as far as Bible study, next week we're starting a in-depth look at the Passover. Just so.
Yeah, I don't know
We
that
know.
we're going to be able to just gently brush over works versus grace in 20 minutes
No.
or an hour. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. So I would ask, what's your favorite thing about working, maybe as a minister or maybe particularly at Clarksville Highway?
You going to ask me about my favorite thing and my least favorite thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Since I was asked that last week.
Okay. I can answer
Fair.
both of those. You want favorite first?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
I mean, I know it's me already, but
Well,
Least favorite.
yeah. I think the favorite thing is I can't pick one. As first as a people. I mean, I love people, and I love the people at Clarksville Highway. Now, I don't mean that in a way that they don't ever frustrate me and get under my skin, because sometimes things happen that do, you know. But I love the people, and I love to see them as they go through their spiritual journey. And I mean that when things are going well, and even when I have an opportunity to talk to people when things aren't going well, you know, and they have to deal with a tragedy in life or something that's really difficult. I just love the people. And the other part of it is from the preaching standpoint. I love to study. I mean, I really do. I just, you know, it probably doesn't come across as much. I love to sit down and study the Bible. And so because of those two things, most of the time it doesn't even feel like a job. I mean, it's like something, and Houston saw this through all of those years that I was in sales. I mean, I would do it. Don't y'all let this get out. I would do it whether I got paid for it or not. I mean, I would still do what I do. You know, and I know that role will change too as I get older and as time goes on. But I mean, I do what I do just because I like it. And that's a real blessing to be able to find something that you do just because you really like doing it. But I guess primarily the people. And second, the study. I mean, I love to sit down and study and write sermons. But anyway.
all right, Houston, you want the
Least
second
favorite.
part?
I mean,
Hey,
yeah.
the least favorite is easy. I mean, it's a no-brainer. the least favorite is not having weekends.
I think that was mine.
And I mean, honestly,
I
even.
think I said something.
Even
It's-
way
it's
back,
hard.
yeah, even
It's
way back
difficult.
at the very, at the very beginning when I was trying to decide if I wanted to do ministry and get money for it. I mean, the least favorite is weekends. Now, that's a little different in our situation than some other preachers, at least in mine, because, I mean, your mom has a job and a career and she's really good at what she does. I mean, she's really good at what she does, but she has to work Monday through Friday afternoon. Okay, so I get off Friday and Saturday, which means if you want to go somewhere, you've got Friday afternoon to Saturday afternoon. So when families say, hey, we're going to go to the mountains for the weekend, or we're going to go down to the beach for the weekend, or we're going to go here or there for the weekend, for us, that involves either Diane taking a vacation day or me taking a vacation day.
Right.
And so it's not like you can, so you boys didn't go on a lot of weekend trips as we grew up because we didn't have time to take, I mean, we
No.
didn't have weekends.
But we did do a lot of you talk about Caney Fork trip we do every year.
Yeah.
I haven't been on in 7 years, but we used to do that, and you still had to preach. I remember we would get up and leave early on either early Sunday morning. A lot of times I think you would just leave early Sunday morning and we'd come
Right.
catch up with you.
A
But
lot of times I would leave you there and I would come back and preach.
yeah, and there were some times when we would go to West Tennessee and you would have to leave or you wouldn't be able to go or
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so just to say we're going to go somewhere on the weekend. Now,
And you get more Sundays in that 25-year
yeah.
contract.
Now, like if like Diane didn't, if like your mom wasn't working, we could have gone, but you would have still been in school, so we still wouldn't have
Yeah,
been able, so it still wouldn't have worked out.
it's
So-
definitely long-term very difficult.
Yeah,
And I only did it for 4 years and, don't have any weekends.
right. I mean, even when you were in Missouri, I mean, for you to say, okay, I'm going to go home for a weekend, that involved taking a Sunday off. I mean, that
Yeah.
involved a vacation day. So it's really difficult because you just don't have weekends.
Yeah, I would come for Christmas, and I don't think I ever took a Sunday for Thanksgiving. I think I would leave on Saturday night.
You would leave and drive back. And so, like in your situation, you could have been gone a Friday and a Saturday, but so you could have had a couple of days together, but not having a weekend is by far the most difficult thing to navigate is not having those weekends. You just can't, when somebody said, we're going to Gatlinburg for the weekend, you're thinking, man, that'd be cool.
Be nice, wouldn't it?
But we're not going to Gatlinburg for the weekend because that's like the camping group, and I don't really like camping that much. But, sometimes people say, why don't you go camping? Well, because by the time I got there Friday night and left Saturday night, it wouldn't be worth putting the stuff together to go camping. And it wouldn't matter anyway if you're in the camping group because I just really don't like camping. So it wouldn't be something that we would do. But
Well, they've all about canceled this weekend because it's
Oh,
going to
okay.
be freezing cold.
Well, but I mean, that is easily the least favorite. I mean, like
Yeah.
even to go see your grandparents or something, just to say, hey, we're going to go to West Tennessee for the weekend. It's just hard to do that. I mean, like when we went for Grandpa's birthday, we went on Friday night.
Yeah.
We came back on Saturday night. So it's just difficult to do those things.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's time.
And when we go again in a few weeks for Poppy's birthday, we're going to do the same thing.
Yeah, it'd probably be, the same kind of thing.
Yep.
In fact, we're actually going to go the weekend before that for that one because I think we have sock wars and maybe a basketball tournament that weekend.
Ah.
So, shameless plug for the basketball tournament too. I think it's going to be May the 21st. So, for like
Yeah.
4-on-4 basketball, let your friends know. All right. So, what's the next question?
I don't know. I think that's all I got. Do we have
You had a
time to
question?
study for a few minutes or no?
We got 15 minutes.
We got 15 minutes. We can either continue to ask you interview questions or we can try to decide between Works and Grace in 15 minutes.
Oh, do you have any other interview questions?
I could probably think of some. I mean, I know that
So if you got
I'm
a
sure
question,
Jeff has some, or somebody else might have some.
if you're
because-
out there listening land and you got a question, send us a question. I can see the YouTube questions, but I can't see the Facebook questions for some reason.
I mean, I could ask all kind of questions. Like, for example, People might like this one, so I'm going to ask it. It's not bad. When you start to prepare for a sermon, what does your study process look like? Where do you start? How early do you begin preparing? And what does that whole system look like?
Okay.
That's a good one.
That's a good question. Usually my sermon ideas will come from one or two places. Okay. One would just be if through communication with people at church in different ways, I see that there is a need to preach about a particular thing. And that fewer of them come that way. When I study, I have one section of time that I just read the Bible. I'm not trying to study. I'm not asking any questions. I just sit down and read. I don't have a very fancy reading plan. I'm sorry. I start in Genesis. I read to Revelation. I start over at Genesis again. And I mean, and I don't read like 2 chapters or 3 chapters or whatever. I try to read like 15 to 20 minutes in the New Testament and 15 to 20 minutes in the Old Testament. Sometimes now I don't even do that. It's like 30 minutes wherever I'm at. And so I'm not trying to come up with sermon ideas when I read that, but I've always got either the computer or a notepad there, and I will write down like something that strikes me.
Okay, and we're going to revisit that in a minute.
Okay, and so that's pretty much where the ideas come from. And then I really, you remember when I used to go deer hunt with Grandpa? So
Yeah.
I'd go spend a week deer hunting with your grandfather. Well, what I would do during that week is I didn't hunt. You know, I sat in the truck, but I would plan my sermons for the next year. So I tried to be a year ahead. Now, since I've quit deer hunting with your grandfather, it's harder for me to stay a year ahead because I don't take a week off and
You
plan.
don't have a whole week just
I don't
to
have
do
a
it.
whole weekend to plan because I had a whole weekend where I was sitting in the woods and I would, work on my sermon schedule for the next 12 months. Now, I still have one that's kind of laid out, but it's not nearly as far. So what that process used to look like, which it needs to get back to because it looks different now, it's more haphazard now, is I would plan my sermons for a year, then I would do a basic outline when I put that together. And then about 5 months before I was supposed to preach that sermon, I would go back and I would revisit it and I would kind of more
That's pretty far in
specifically.
advance. I mean, I would
Yeah.
forget
Yeah.
in a year and
I'd
5
more
months.
specifically write down what I wanted to talk about. And then what I would do is the week or 2 weeks before I was to preach that, I would pull it back out and revisit it again. But what you would find out is that when you did that, is that there would be an illustration or a thought. There'd be something that you would hear, and you would think, oh, yeah, I got a sermon coming up about that, and so, and so you'd jot those ideas down. So, that's basically how it works. And now,
So a year
the
in
nuts-
advance, except right now.
Except for, and I really want to get back to a year in advance, because I feel a whole lot better when I'm that far out.
You need to go deer hunting.
Well, I need to do something. I was going to do it at the beach, but we never got around to doing that.
No, we didn't.
So,
We were real productive that week.
yeah. And generally how that works is I sit down and I will study through the passage, and I'll write down all of my questions. I'll write down the things that I think are important. I'll try to do all of the work that I can. I generally won't look at a commentary until I've done everything that I want to do. And then I might go back and read a commentary and say, you know what, that's a pretty difficult verse. I wonder what somebody else said about that. But I'll do that after I've done my own study. And so I've come to my conclusion, and then I'll weigh that against what somebody else has said about it. So then I'll go back and look at commentaries. The hardest thing for me, and the thing I'm not very good about, and it shows in my preaching, I mean, you can see this by the way I preach, I'm not very good about going and finding illustrations. I just don't have a knack for that, where people hear stories and think about stories and they come up with an illustration of this. I am just not very good about doing that. That's not stuff that I chase down, and I don't have.
I think if you try too hard for those, they feel forced.
Yeah, and I don't have books of illustrations that say, hey, here's a great illustration about faith or something like that, because probably the only thing that I have more is just kind of like personal stories. But after you've heard those, I know that people get tired of hearing them because they get repeated. But I mean, I'm just not really good at going hunting that stuff down. I just don't have time for it, to be honest. So I'm not as illustration heavy as a lot of other preachers. And I know a lot of people really, really like that, but it's just not me. So I don't try not to be something that I'm not. So,
Yeah.
but I do try to make it, I do try to work hard on making it pretty simple and easy to understand.
I think that's kind of the key, to be honest. I read one book that I got in college, and now I don't know what it is. I still have it. I'll read it every once in a while. But it's about preaching, and it says, like, the big overarching theme of the book that I really took to heart is make one point.
Yeah.
That's what I always try to do. Is I have one point that I want to make, and I just try to make one point. Because if I do 2 or 3, I forget them. I can't expect anybody else to remember them.
There's a book, and I can't remember the author, somebody that can look this up, but it's a book called Deep Preaching. It's a really good book, but the thing that I remember out of the Deep Preaching book is he said the thing that's missing in most people's sermons are the amount of time they spend praying over their sermon. So you need a lot of time. I mean, you've got a material, but then you've got, you're trying to relate that to an audience, and the audience is very different, and the audience hears it from different perspectives. And I can say the same thing, use exactly the same words, and there are people in the auditorium who will hear different things by me using because that's where they are in their life. And so the guy that wrote Deep Preaching said you got to make sure that you pray over your sermon enough that God gives you the words to communicate that you need to communicate, and that the people who are hearing can listen to those words. And I think that's really important. I spend a lot of time, after I get an outline and I spend a lot of time praying over that and wonder if that's the right thing to say. There was one preacher, I forgot who it was, he always had 5 people under his pulpit preaching for him. I always thought that was neat. Maybe we need 4, huh?
Praying for him.
Yeah, what did I
Not
say?
preaching for him.
No, praying for him. Yeah.
5 people preaching for him.
Praying for him. And so I always thought that'd be kind of a cool thing if you had 4 or 5 people praying over you every time you got ready to preach. So anyway.
Cool.
Did that answer your question?
It did. I have another question now.
Okay.
Because
This is why you don't get interviewed by your son.
no, it's not son related.
Okay.
Because I was in ministry for 4 years, and I'm sure Jeff knows what this is like too, but there's a really big difference between personal Bible study and preparation for Bible classes and sermons.
Yes. They're remarkably
think
different.
They're very different, and I think a lot of people don't know that, and you just think, oh, well, all you do is study the Bible all day. It should be really easy to stay spiritually healthy and on top of things, and it's not. You do still have to make specific time for personal devotional and personal time with God.
Right.
So do you have a strategy on a way that you do that? Do you have a time, like a specific point of the day, or?
I don't know that I have a specific time of the day. I mean, maybe it is just because by default it ends up being like the first little bit after I get to the office, and that is, I mean, I get here early.
Yeah, before your pesky son shows
Yeah.
up. starts
I
eating
mean,
your
so
food.
I mean,
Before
I
other
usually,
people are in there.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm usually here by 6:15 or 6:30. So before anything kind of gets started, before anything really gets happening in the day, I mean, I usually have 30 minutes or so, and I'll usually take, and sometimes more, but I'll usually take that time and kind of do like my personal Bible study,
Beginning of the
my
day.
reading, my prayer time, my reading of the, so
Just curious.
yeah. I mean,
It sounds backwards, but I feel like my relationship with God is better now than it was when I was in ministry. I know it sounds kind of terrible, but it's hard to make that time when you do spend all day studying, and then
if you spend, I mean, studying for sermons and studying for classes are just a different, to me, I'm not going to speak for everybody, I'm only speaking for me, but that's a different kind of dynamic than just stopping and spending time with God personally. like one thing that I did for years is I wouldn't listen to the radio. Because, I mean, you're driving here and driving there and going to hospitals, going there, and I would just say, okay, I'm not going to listen to the radio during that time. I'm just going to talk to God. And so, I mean, you got that time. You're usually alone, and I mean, you can pray and pay attention at the same time. Don't close your eyes, right? You pray with your eyes open. But yeah, I mean, I think you have to be really careful about how you find that time. I mean, and I think you need to find it whether you're a minister and you study the Bible all the time, or if you do something else. I mean, everybody has to find that time to make it happen.
Well, that's a thing that everybody has to struggle with is, how do I create the time to make this happen? And ministers are not an exception to that.
No, and I think, I think that's something that's really critical. Because if you spend all of your time just writing sermons, and that's the type of study that you do, then,
that's not really one-on-one time with God.
No.
It's not the same.
No.
It's easy to get in that place where you just like try to justify it, though. You're like, well,
Yeah, that's
I
what I
studied
was
the
saying.
Bible a lot today.
That's kind of what I did a lot of times. I was, I studied all day. It was really easy to kind of give myself an excuse or an out at the end of the day or at the beginning of the day. Now I do it in the morning, but that was something that I slipped on a lot. Is I
Right.
didn't do a lot of that myself.
Yeah. And different people have different times that they do it, but I think people need to find a spot somewhere in their life to make it happen.
Definitely. All right. We're
You got
about
another
out of
question?
time.
I could if I wanted to,
You got
but
a little
it's
bit of time.
7:57. I don't want to start a whole nother thing.
All right, do we have any other questions here? I'm sorry we didn't Bible study. They kept asking questions, but
Well, it
just
was
kind of
interview
to
time.
Blame
kind of
it on
to I think probably one of the things that I'm most thankful for, I mean honestly, is people who have had like really positive influences, like starting with like even like like my mom and dad. They always took me to church. They always tried to show us Christian values, and that wasn't just reflected by them, that was reflected by the family as well. You go all the way back to Daddy Bill and Grandmother, which you got to meet Grandmother, but you didn't get to meet Daddy Bill. But even their faith was an extension of Grandmother and Daddy Bill's faith and Mama's faith, and then that faith passed down to your generation, and then aunts and uncles, and then all of those other people along the line, like Tim Logan and Larry Nash and Bill Orange, and and people who, your mom,
Yeah.
and people who mentor that relationship with God, because you surround yourself with people who want to have that same kind of relationship with God, and it's important. And it's important to surround yourself with people like that so that you have the right influences. And had it not been for all of those different influences all through life, things could have turned out way differently. Even the influence that I had in the youth group, Jeff, I mean, I know this isn't a question, but, the youth group that I grew up in was so close and so tight that we held each other accountable, and those are still some of my, my really good friends because of what, it was, but each one of those people had an influence on.
Well, I mean, like you, I don't remember ever not going to church.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't tell you when I started going. It's just always been
Yeah, when you were
what I did.
You were in the car seat.
Yeah.
When we could pull you, and
So-
when you first got old enough to go anywhere, then
I
that's where
also,
you were going.
you're talking on Sunday about how you not having a story, and that was something that I struggled with even in college, because it makes you think, is my faith not as strong because I don't have a story, or I wasn't here, and then
Right. But your faith can be just as strong because it's anchored in something that's really solid. And I feel that way now. I think that, my story is I just, and we talked about this Sunday, go back and listen to the sermon Sunday, but, I just, my story is I'm one of those people who was fortunate enough to be in a family who instilled Christian values in me.
Yeah, and either any kind of story someone can learn from.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So you guys probably learned more about me than you ever wanted to know, but
Yeah. We appreciate everyone tuning in, and
I was going to look, see if there are any other questions out there.
I got a comment from Linda that says, I enjoyed the maps, but I don't know what that means.
I don't either. I enjoyed the maps.
Was that something you used in a class or sermon at some point?
Yeah. I mean, on the live stream stuff, I would use the maps when we did live stream on Wednesday night because I could link it to my computer.
Yeah.
We can still do maps now, but we can't see them. They would be, well, we could see them on
can
that
see 'em.
screen maybe.
We have a screen.
Yeah. So, yeah. I can't control the map doing it this way, though.
You really got to squint to see it.
Yeah.
It's pretty far away.
All right. Hey, thanks for tuning in. Sorry this was more discussion, but maybe that's what you wanted to hear, so you got to hear all about me.
Yeah.
We're
For
doing
whatever
the-
that
the
was
inter-
worth.
The interview
So
series.
we're
I mean,
doing an
people can
interview series.
still
Next week, I
learn
think
from
we're
that.
interviewing Cheryl Kilgore. So looking forward to that. Looking forward to that.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool. All right.
We'll have record numbers next week.
Yeah, we'll have
Watch
record
them for real.
numbers to hear that. All
Just
right.
because there's a lot of Kilgores.
Okay, are we signing off?
All right.
Signing off.
So we're signing off. Good
night.
night.